A few years ago, my two friends and I accidentally heard about an abandoned warehouse that used to be a strange furniture store. It had since fallen into disrepair and become eerily mysterious. One night, we decided to check it out for ourselves. We parked our car in a nearby store parking lot and then walked toward the warehouse. As we got closer, the air was filled with a decaying odor. We stood outside the warehouse, staring at the rusty, battered door that seemed to have not been opened in a long time. The wall next to the door was covered in weeds, nearly engulfing the entire building. We turned on our flashlights and prepared to take a side path around to the back, searching for the rumored broken wall. After circling the warehouse, we finally found the entrance, where the damaged wall revealed a narrow opening just big enough for us to squeeze through. Upon entering, the surrounding darkness seemed to instantly swallow us. The beam of the flashlight swept across the floor, revealing piles of old furniture, rotting wood, and broken glass. The air was thick with a musty, damp smell. We stepped into a large room, and the flashlight illuminated the surrounding area, exposing the crumbling walls covered in hasty graffiti and strange symbols. Near the back wall, the graffiti became even more disturbing, almost chilling. Some patterns resembled strange ritual symbols, with inverted crosses and bizarre numbers appearing on the wall. In a corner filled with debris, we noticed remnants of candle stubs and burnt ashes, as if someone had held some sort of ritual there. My friend paused, nervously reminding me to be aware of our surroundings. Suddenly, we heard a metallic clanking noise coming from another room in the distance. We exchanged glances and decided to investigate further. The deeper we went inside, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if each step was pulling us deeper into an invisible trap. After climbing a rickety staircase, we spotted a half-open iron door, faint light seeping through the crack. We slowly approached the door and peered inside through the gap. The sight froze us in place. Inside the room, some old furniture was arranged in a circle, with odd objects placed in the center, remnants of some kind of ritual. In one corner hung a bizarre painting depicting a distorted face that seemed to be staring at us. Just then, we heard rapid footsteps outside the door. A deep voice echoed from a distance, as if someone was approaching. We dared not linger any longer and quickly turned to flee. Just as we neared the exit, we suddenly heard the roar of an engine. A truck sped around the corner, its headlights shining directly at us. We had no time to think. We took off running toward the other side of the warehouse. When we finally reached our car and started the engine to leave, our hearts were still racing. Everything in that warehouse felt like a nightmare, and the appearance of that truck confirmed our suspicion that some people or things were watching us from the shadows. We never returned to that place and never truly understood what had happened that night. All we knew was that the darkness of that warehouse concealed deeper secrets. That night, I was on the midnight shift, patrolling a massive warehouse. The warehouse housed various equipment, and it was empty and quiet. I was working alongside another security guard, who was responsible for patrolling outside in a car while I walked inside the warehouse. This job was usually calm, with not much happening most of the time. As I walked down the aisle in the middle of the warehouse, I caught a glimpse of a small white shadow out of the corner of my eye, as if it was peeking out from behind a shelf. I thought something had fallen, so I walked over to check it out. However, when I got closer, I saw nothing, just a neatly stacked pile of boxes. I figured it was probably just a reflection from the lights, so I continued on. A few minutes later, I saw that white object again, this time much closer. I stood still to take a closer look and realized it looked like a piece of fabric hanging off the edge of a box. I chuckled, thinking it might be something someone had accidentally left behind while working, and I approached to pick it up. As I got closer, I suddenly smelled an unusual odor, like something had gone bad. I looked down and saw a wooden crate that was slightly different from the surrounding boxes. I thought maybe something inside had spoiled, so I opened the crate to see what was inside. However, instead of broken equipment, I found a pile of packaging materials, seemingly old goods that hadn't been dealt with in a long time. Feeling a bit uneasy, I contacted my colleague outside using the walkie-talkie. He told me he was still patrolling and would come in a few minutes. I didn't think much of it and continued to complete my rounds before heading back to the office. Later, the police arrived at the warehouse because someone had reported a missing shipment from a few days earlier. During their investigation, they mentioned that the surveillance footage in certain areas hadn't been functioning properly for a period of time. Although this didn't mean much to me, it added a layer of mystery to the whole situation. I chatted with my colleague, and we speculated that it could be due to equipment failure or some kind of oversight. Even years later, that night still leaves a strong impression on me because of that strange smell and the white shadow that always comes to mind. However, I believe it was just an ordinary work night with a few unexpected occurrences. In my mid-20s, I worked as a party planner and event coordinator for a large company, where I would rent venues and set up temporary event spaces for our parties. This time, we rented an abandoned warehouse to host 2 large events over the weekend. The entire warehouse was spacious and run down, making it suitable for lively gatherings, and I was in charge of all the preparations. On Thursday night, my team and I moved all the equipment into the warehouse, setting up tables, building a temporary bar, and arranging the DJ booth. The lighting system in the warehouse was somewhat outdated, and I planned to activate the power in certain areas but discovered that the control equipment seemed to be hidden somewhere in the basement. I contacted the person responsible for managing the warehouse, who instructed me on how to find the electrical panel underground. Following his directions, I pushed open a rusty metal door marked exit and entered a narrow corridor that was very dimly lit, with only a few weak safety lights. At the end of the corridor, there was a small staircase leading deeper underground. The air was filled with a musty odor, and the surroundings felt damp and cold. I descended the stairs and finally found the electrical panel, activating the required power as instructed. Just as I was about to head back, I heard a strange buzzing sound, similar to an electrical malfunction. I followed the sound and found a somewhat worn door with a red indicator light above it, flickering on and off. My instincts told me not to enter, but curiosity drove me to push the door open. Inside the room, it was exceptionally dark, with only the red light flickering occasionally, accompanied by a piercing buzzing sound. I moved closer and noticed that whenever I shifted, the red light and buzzing would respond as if acknowledging my presence. I stood still, trying to make sense of it all, but soon, a chill ran down my spine. At that moment, I noticed a vague figure in the corner of the room. They were crouched behind old boxes, their hair disheveled and head down. My heart raced as I tried to see their face. When the red light flickered again, I saw them, eyes wide open, expressionless face, and a half smile that conveyed an indescribable eeriness. They slowly raised one hand, as if beckoning me to come closer. In that instant, my fear reached its peak. I quickly shut the door, ran up the stairs, and dashed back to the main area of the warehouse. I immediately informed my team to pack up. We could not continue working here. Who was that person in the warehouse? Why were they there? I had no interest in exploring those questions further. We swiftly evacuated the warehouse, loading all the equipment back into the truck. I didn't look back at the dark basement. All I knew was that whatever was down there, I never wanted to go near that place again.